Hello, good morning. Welcome back from the holidays. We missed a few weeks, but it was Christmas and New Year's, and I was traveling, and Tavis, you were very busy, but we're back. How were the holidays for you? I know it's always a busy
Good
time
morning.
around there.
Man, we
The
had
Westbrook household.
December was kind of a blur. We started off beginning of September, the first, second week. They're in the Caribbean again. So
Mm,
this was a little different. We took a Virgin cruise out of Puerto Rico and went downward to the, what they call the West Indies, as well as the West or the East Leland Islands. So we kind of hopped around and explored some new places. So that was
hmm
pretty cool. That was a long trip. It was like a 10-day, 11-day trip.
Yep. Yeah, we
And
talked a little bit about that because
you held
when you
down the
came back,
fort.
I held
Yeah.
down the Shady Hill Fort while you were gone. Yeah.
Yeah, you're right. I think we did record one
I think the
after that.
last
But like I
episode we
said,
did,
it's
we
been
actually
kind of a
kind of that was
blur.
it. Yeah. Yeah, there's a
and
lot
then we
going on.
then we roll into the holidays, and because they fell in the middle of this week, in the middle of the week, back to back, right? You got Christmas and New Year's are exactly a week away from each other. Um, because of that, you've got people, subs, for instance, taking off beginning of the week, so they extend their front weekend into the holiday, and then you have other ones taking it off from the backside.
Yeah.
So it made it really challenging and tricky of who's working, who's not working, and then this week we've rolled into extremely cold weather for Dallas, and it's been very consistent, which is very odd because usually we get a couple days that it's cold. I was just mentioning off air about my pool being low on water, and I can't fill it up because it's freezing temperatures. So I'm having to make do right now. And I had a dream that half the pool was frozen. So it did happen to us back in
21.
2021, I
Yeah.
believe. That the pool froze over enough to get YouTube videos from Landon and his friends running across the pool. So hopefully
Landon and
that
his friends, man, they are
doesn't
definitely more
happen
like
again.
they're like the stereotypical just rowdy boys because I was riding in the truck 2 days ago and Tabitha was like, "Hey, I'm having friends over to the house and we need to get the painter slash sheetrock guy over to fix the holes up where Landon and his friends like
Yep.
landed into the wall or they were like playing basketball or wrestling or something up in the upstairs. Like him to come patch this. And so I talked to Adrian yesterday and I said something about, "Hey, I want you to teach me how to do, fix some small patches." And
Mm,
he's like, "Oh, I was
yeah.
just over at Tavis's house." I was just over there doing patches. So
Basketball is a contact sport. So I guess Landon last night we were talking to him about it, and he brought it up. He goes, "Well, that wasn't me." He goes, "That was Anthony and my friend."
mm,
So here's the 11-year-old brother that's 11 years older,
yeah,
and that was up there, roughhousing with one
feeling
of
his
Landon's
oats.
friends, and
Yeah.
somebody got thrown into the wall, and therefore we get the luxury
It
of
might have been Anthony.
hiring
That
Adrian
might
to
have been why you
patch
didn't
it.
hear about it. Anthony got thrown into the wall by some
Yeah.
young guy, and he's embarrassed. He thought he was going to show him a thing or two, and there he goes into the sheetrock. So,
Yep. Yep.
but yeah,
There we
super
go.
cold. So, a couple of years ago, I remember in 21, one of the tricks that I was doing home health at the time, and everyone would talk about it. And one of the tricks that several people swore by was throwing a bunch of like empty jugs and buckets into the pool so it would like break up
Mm.
the ice. But I don't,
Oh, so we couldn't connect.
I guess, I don't know. Or
Yeah.
maybe it was just delayed because, of course, it would freeze eventually. But I
Yeah.
don't know. But several people mentioned that and they would throw things into the
Interesting.
pool to try to help it keep it moving or something. I don't know.
Yeah.
Didn't sound terribly official, but
Interesting. Huh.
yeah, I've got to do the insulation on the. We're going to talk a little bit about it a little later in the news section on some of the things about different houses and stuff like that. So
Awesome.
maybe we'll get into that then. But
So as long as we keep power on, that's
yeah,
that's where our downfall was in 21, as we lost
yeah,
power.
yeah. The
And
whole house
we were
generator.
actually in Jamaica when that happened, so we were not here. Um, so we had my brother-in-law at the time house sitting for us. So we got to hear those stories. And that's also why I think Landon and his friends were running across the pool. Because mom and dad were not here.
Yeah.
So,
Yeah, I would, if money wasn't an option, I would have one of those whole house generators. I think they're really good idea.
I looked at it after that point, and I think the lowest quote I got, like going direct and having my guys do a lot of the work, was like $15,000.
Yeah, they're expensive. I had a patient that had one, and he lived in a very nice part of town, and he was not a prepper, but he had done it in a way where he wanted it hidden from the street, and he wanted it to be quiet. Like, he had gone to great lengths to get that, but also have where his neighbors wouldn't know he had it. Of course, if your lights being on for days on end would probably be a giveaway. But
so I was looking at a house that I bid on. I thought I won the bid not too long ago. This was back. We talked about it probably during the podcast, but in April, I think I first walked it, and then like August it came back, and it was like, hey, we're back on it. We've been through 3 other contracts, and it was supposed to happen. Well, then something else happened, and it didn't end up working out, but it was in Carrollton, and they had one of those Generac generators.
Mm-hmm.
So my thought is, all right, I'll buy the house and then
buy a house
my guys
and get the that's a good idea.
I'll buy my guy. I'm going to pay for my guys to go disassemble it and bring it to my house.
That's the best. Maybe you can get solar that way. You can get a house with solar and then just drag them over there. Yeah.
After the panels are paid for.
We're bidding on a house. We're trying to get a house right now up in Little Elm that has the solar system. And it's complicated because I was talking to her, and whenever she sells, she's going to pay it off. And I noticed a little bit of
You said 90,000.
90,000 payoff.
That's the highest I've ever seen.
She's had it for 3
Solar
years.
panels.
She's been paying for 3 years, and she still owes 90,000. And
ouch.
They did a new roof right before it, and on the roof line I could see some.
Man.
Oh my gosh, they make some money. And then on the roof line you could see some tape, and so I asked her about it. She goes, "Well, it's a newer roof. That must be from the solar guys." And I'm like, I don't know. It looks kind of like a cheap little repair someone did. I don't know, but she didn't seem to be terribly aware about it. But anyway, well, this week is a big week for me and you. I've been seeing you more than I normally do because in order to keep my dainty hands busy and get out there and get some work going, I've been demoing. So I managed Shady Hill. I've got a closing coming up in a few weeks. We're under contract, past option with Alma, and
Fireworks.
That's great. Yep. Open door. It actually. Allie did an amazing job of negotiating. She held to her guns, like, this is what I'm going to pay, and they sort of acquiesced, which was great. So that's going well. I've been on some appointments and talked to some people about future listings and some things like that. But just to kind of stay in the game, I started look, I've got this house over in Carrollton. It's really actually pretty close to my house. If you want to demo it, go for it. And so what's funny is that last Friday, the first day, you hadn't really decided on the scope of what you were going to do yet. You'd run comps to buy the house, but you hadn't landed on your number. And you're like, well, go over there and, take the door handles off, and you can take some lights out. It was real kind of light work, And then over the weekend, you're like, hey, we got to get going on this thing. I'm like, wait a minute. I thought, he's like, we got to do this. And like every day it's like peeling back the onion, and you're like, okay, well, let's take that wall down. Okay, take that down. So now we're not moving walls, but it's a pretty decent demo. It's a pretty decent demo over there. So it's been fun though, because what I was saying is it's been an education.
We've got wires
construction. Yeah, there's wires everywhere. It's been an education on construction technique, just because you're going backwards and you're seeing how they build walls, this is what a load bearing wall looks like versus just a stud wall, and this is what this is how countertops are connected to the cabinets, and this is how sinks are connected. And I've made stupid mistakes. Like yesterday, I took a Sawzall to the sink thinking the water was turned off, and it just started spraying water all over the kitchen. Luckily, the plumbers were literally pulling up.
That's when we need a camera crew. We need a camera crew video of that.
I was panicked. I was panicked. Here's why I was panicked.
Makes for good social media and media content in general, right?
Yeah. Well, I was panicked because it was spraying water all over cabinets, and it's particle board cabinets because this is a Fox and Jacobs house, and these cabinets are not the most expensive things to begin with. And I'm like, man, if these things get too wet, this is not going to be good. And
Yeah.
so I'm like frantically trying to turn the cutoff, at the sink, and it's, of course, it's all rusted and hard to turn. And but Carlos's guys got there right in time, and they get out to the street, and I think they were surprised too, because I think they thought the water was off because they've been digging under the house about to take the cast iron out. So it was either me or them, because they about 20 minutes after I did that, they started cutting cast iron out, and I'm like, you're about to have a problem.
You mentioned that the other day, because I went outside to water the grass, and you said, the water's on, the bathrooms are in here, they work. And I'm like, no, I think they're shut off.
I may have been right.
But the tunnels were in, so I don't, maybe it wasn't disassembled at that point, but I wasn't crawling down there to check. So
no, those guys are amazing. They excavated, they're taking the cast iron out, they dig this huge tunnel under the house, and they're up under there cutting out cast iron. And now their excavation crew is a different crew, right?
That's a different crew, and that's the most expensive part. Like, those guys, came in there and tunneled under that house. But it's a big
by
hole.
hand.
Like, it's big enough for you and I to get down there together, powwow.
Yeah, it's all by hand, and there's huge pile out front, huge pile out back, and then they have to put it back when it's all done.
Right.
Yeah. So kudos to those guys. That is quite the. But even then, Carlos's crew's under there putting new PVC, and you can smell the glue from in the house. It's just so pungent, and it's just that is a tough job to do that. But yeah, getting to see all that up close, and talking with you through some design decisions, and hey, should we keep this wall? Let's do a half wall. Let's do some floating shelves.
Yeah,
here.
and you've helped. You've definitely help push the needle on a few things that we've made decisions on. So
yeah, well, I told you, and we're going to look at a house here in a little bit to give you some inspiration, because I've got plenty of areas of growth that I'm working on personally and business, and I'm trying to push myself. But I told you, I said, here's the area of growth I need from you this year. We're going to do one flip of the 20 that you want to do this year. We're going to do at least in one of them. We're going to prepare for some wallpaper. And so we're gonna go wallpaper on one of the projects. So we'll figure that out. I think.
So your challenge is to find me a talented wallpaper person that is not going to break the bank, because Angel's brother does it, but he is not the happiest person doing it. And the one time I hired him to do it,
I guess, but this is what it's going to cost.
Well, he wasn't bad on price. The problem is it wasn't exactly perfect, and so. Now, I did take that back. I did do another project with wallpaper, and I have a lady in my phone that did it. And so maybe I have to reconnect with that. Now that I'm brainstorming and thinking about it, I did one for the Fitzpatricks. If you know Brian Fitzpatrick out of our office, and so they live up in the Tribute, and we took a little desk area in their house a couple years back and turned it into a bar area, and put a glass door in, and put a beverage fridge and like wine holders and LED lights and like all the fancy stuff. And she somehow convinced Becky, who runs Independent Title, I believe it is. And she convinced her husband to allow him to, to put wallpaper in. But she bought it off of Amazon.
Yeah.
So it's like a peel and stick. And this is like, I have to find the pictures and send it to you. It turned out pretty cool, but it is like bright silver glitter wallpaper, like extremely loud and proud. And it's like paper thin, and so like trying to get the seams to line up and be perfect were extremely tough, because it wasn't very good.
I'm not looking out for the future renovator, because as someone who's about to have to peel wallpaper off of multiple rooms at this demo, I don't care about that guy in 30 years who's going to be there doing that. I want it to look cool. And yeah, there's a couple, I found a couple cool when we were doing, I think Polk or Mapleton, I was considering it.
Yeah.
Things just got out of
I
hand,
think that it
but
is a trend that's come back. In certain areas, I think it as an accent wall. I think it can be used, but yeah,
for sure.
I'm kind of
Powder bath.
somewhat on the fence with it, just because it's pretty permanent once it goes
It's
in,
pretty
right?
permanent and it can be polarizing. And I understand, you don't want to do something that's just so over the top for some people are like, yeah, that's not me. But I think if you do a powder bath or, and I'm on this project, obviously it's not going to happen, but I think it, even behind the wet bar, the floating shelves in the wet bar, it's kind of just a small little accent wall that's covered up by a lot of other things. And to me, it feels very hotel lounge ish and
Mm-hmm.
kind of, I'm kind of thinking more of like the dark, moody, just kind of, um, yeah, that type of wallpaper, not your huge 9-inch wide peony,
Yep.
very effeminate. That's not me. But there are some sites out there that are super cool where you can actually change all the colors of the patterns, and there's got a lot of cool retro
We
patterns.
did. We actually did do it in a flip. And Michael Kearney, actually, him and his wife bought the house from us back in, this was 2016, 17.
Mm.
And back then I had the edge of doing some wallpaper. And I'll have to send the videos to you if I could find them. But
Yeah.
we um, we did it for them, and well, we did it in the house, and then they ended up buying the house. But it's pretty cool. It we did like a cool pattern in the powder bath, and then we actually did this cool kind of metallic, um, low key kind of pattern in. So like a lot of these Plano homes or these old '70s homes have, uh, molded walls, right? It has the
Mm.
big panel walls with
Yeah.
the
Yeah.
molding. So it had some kind of fabric wallpaper inside of these sections before, and so we
Mm.
took that out and then we put in kind of a
A
new
new one.
edgy, and it turned out really cool.
Yeah.
Like
The best kind is the one where they actually have padding in them, and there's actually. I love that. They did wallpaper. They actually like made it 3D by putting some sort of like cotton polyester pattern, like
Yep.
padding behind it or whatever. All right, well, let's get into a little bit of a market update. So I'm going to try a new technology here. When I logged into Riverside this morning, they said, "Hey, you can do screen share," and um, I am going to try to do the screen share here, and it says it can be a part of the recording that we do. So we shall see. All right, so these are the trends that we look at here. I always look at Denton, Collin, and Dallas County, and those are the lines on the bottom here. And then we have the all
Look at
over.
this. This is kind of cool.
Are you seeing this?
Yeah.
Nice. Okay. Because
Yeah,
I'm.
this is
Oh yeah,
great.
yeah, yeah. Nice.
So now I'm
So
not having to log in at the same time.
there you go. And so yeah, so this is the view I look at every time, and so this will really push us to get some video out there now that we're really talking about video stuff. Um, so yeah, so here we are, and like I can click down on the closed sales here. So I'm gonna get on this screen. So um, closed sales. So what I was looking at earlier, month supply has actually dropped. So the overall month supply we're looking at is 3.9. At our peak back in September, it was at 4.8. So if you look back here, I always do the 10-year look back. The before that was 2019 was our peak, and so then we came over here month supply 4.8, and that has dropped down to 3.9, which is interesting. There's less homes out there, um, but the days on market has really taken a jump because let's say early April 24, we were down at 47. We had gotten up into the 60s in January. Of course, last year we were down here in the low 40s, 30s in some counties. Well, now we're way up at 67, Denton County 58, and Collins 63. The let's see, original list price is stuff we talked about before. This is our percentage of original price. There it is. So 95% is the average. It says median. The average of the original list price. So, which it always kind of talks about whether or not people are pricing properly. For a long time, it was 98%.
I mean, 5%. I mean, 5%
5% drop is
negotiation
not like,
is
yeah,
normal. That's kind of what we saw
yeah.
statistically.
So average, it shows 94. Like for instance, Allie, I mean, she got a much better deal than that. She's bringing that
Yeah.
average down. But in general, 94, 94. I saw this shows to pending here is 13 overall, 15 Denton County, 15, but
Yeah.
shows per listing.
I mean, what's interesting when you go back and look at, when you see that huge spike in Collin County in 22, I mean, it's wild to think back to that. And we're finally getting past that point to where people are not thinking that way anymore, because, now we're rolling into, we're now 2025, and it's like, but forever that spike in the market in the first quarter of 22 caused a lot of people to like have that in their brain, when we're having conversation, whether it was an investor, whether it's an agent you're arguing with. And I think that had a lot to do with, the reason that everyone struggled so bad with pricing, for a while. And I feel like they're finally getting past that point. But
yeah, this is the total number of houses for sale that I look at every time. So back in 2019, we're at 44,000, and we peaked up at 43,698, and now we've dropped back down to 36.
Well, and if you look at 22, so look at the height of 22. It was one of our lowest inventories.
Yep.
Go back down in the beginning part of 22.
So there's January,
right there, January 22. Yeah.
Yeah. Just at 12,000, and now we're at 36. We have 3 times as many homes for sale as we did in 2022. Yeah. So that's cool that they've got this feature going, and we can actually look at our things here. So, well, cool. Let's talk about a little bit of news. So I will go back over here. Stop screen sharing. So let's do this. Screen share here. This is a Dallas Morning News article.
Look at that.
I don't know if I can get in trouble for this, but because this is behind a paywall. I'm a paying subscriber here.
But you pay for it.
I pay for
our page.
And all the millions of people watching this are just circumventing the paywall through us. And I'm sure it'll come down like a hammer. Like the feds did.
Market Street's getting all this free advertising right now. So
yeah, they're going to bring the hammer like the feds have done again to our friends in Richardson. RealPage, which is a software that helps property managers price their rentals. They actually, the DOJ had, they came down on them earlier this year, but then about a month ago, they dropped that investigation. Well, then they popped back up this week, and Dallas-based Willow Bridge, and then RealPage, and several other big ones, Blackstone, Camden Property, Cushman and Wakefield, all these ones that you've heard of, signs everywhere. They're being accused of price fixing, and between the 6 of them, they manage 1.3 units in 43 states. Dude, this is a great feature. Now I can actually like show you the article. We can go through all this stuff. But right here is the key thing. It says Dallas-Fort Worth is the second largest market for RealPage rent recommendations, and they accuse them of driving up the cost of each apartment by an estimated $132 a month. So they are going to go and try to figure that out. I think this is their second attempt at this. And so we'll see how that, I don't know. Maybe they're just so big. They're accusing them of kind of committing. They don't really have a monopoly because it's not one company, but they're committing it. So I don't know how the software is doing that. Maybe I think we've talked about this where there's maybe on that, like the user interface, there's a recommended rent. They recommend that this should rent for $2,200 a month, because they have that for short-term rentals, and even on, like, for instance, Zillow it's like Zillow being accused of price fixing when they do the Zestimate. Like, well, this should be
Yeah.
worth $714,000. You're like, okay, I guess, if a for sale by owner went and put it up for sale, like, they're only going based on that. So, oh wow, so it follows that. So that's all the different articles there. I'm learning as we're going here. So, news article number 2, and this is kind of what we were talking about. So it's going to get down to freezing, and for several days in a row. Supposed to get some snow tomorrow. Typically, folks don't do too well on driving on ice, but snow's not terrible. But let's kind of talk through construction and how some houses are built and the things you might want to look for if you're trying to prepare your house for freezing and why some homes might be a little bit more difficult. So when I saw this, I would imagine, a house that is pier and beam would be
Mm-hmm.
the hardest. I mean, because even if you so I went to Home Depot the other day, and even if you put those foam pipe insulators on
Yep.
pipe in a let's say on a pier and beam, that's not going to,
Which
what does
they
that
should
do?
have that. Yeah.
Yeah, they should have that. But I mean, let's say you have an exposed pipe, or you're trying to do your best and you're running everywhere trying to put insulated. I mean, how much is pipe insulation going to help when it's 20
Well,
degrees outside?
I don't know if you've noticed or if you know this or not, but on pier and beam homes, they have, especially in our areas where we get, um, heavy rains and humidity, and um, you've been in crawl spaces. Polk, for instance, that was extremely wet during the wet season, things like that. So the screens, the vents, pier and beam homes have to have adequate ventilation. So you want the airflow to go underneath the home and escape. And I believe it at Polk you had to add a fan or a
Yep.
dehumidifier or something
Fan.
that would push that air out. But what happens is a lot of people that have pier beam, they usually, a lot of the homes came with it, but people take them off because you're supposed to vent the home during the hotter months. So you take off the metal shields.
Mm,
But in the wintertime, you're supposed to put them on, and that keeps the cold air from being able to go inside underneath the house.
drafting under there.
Exactly. So during the winter months, you're supposed to be able to put those metal shields up, which helps keep that cold air from being able to go underneath the home.
Mm,
We have to do similar things at the boat. So we have ventilation when the motors are running. You want to exhaust, all of those engine fumes and anything like that coming from the engine room. So you need that exhaust to be able to escape, right? It's a little bit lesser of a issue than, for instance, gasoline, right, which is combustible exhaust fumes that come out. Need to be able to vent really well. And I have diesels, but nevertheless, we still, cover up these vents. And the reason we do it is because in the wintertime, when it's just sitting there, um, even though we have engine heaters, or what called bilge heaters, that's regulated by the marine safety world, if you will. You have to get one that's rated. But that cold air coming in, especially if you lose power, then it becomes a major problem.
mm.
So as long as you cover up those vents where cold air can't get into that engine room or into the bilge, then it does pretty good. So those shields for pier and beam actually work really well.
Okay.
Going back to that, in new code for pier and beam homes, it is required that one, a lot of energy is actually making people insulate the crawl space between the crawl space in the house itself. One
Okay.
keeps the house, warmer and cooler depending on the time of year.
So how would they
But it,
do that? Is there a weatherproof insulation they can kind of
yeah,
staple to the underside, or
Did they make you insulate poke underneath? Did you have to go in and put bats and insulation on the crawl space?
no? No, that was I
Did you
think
have
the
to do
only
that at
thing I had to
Mapleton?
do, no, the only thing
Okay.
I had to do is at Mapleton, because we were evidently growing a mushroom farm underneath the house. We did put the fan there.
Yeah.
And on both houses, we ended up taking the trash out. So I can't remember if I got under the house at Polk. I definitely did it in Mapleton.
Yeah. I think Polk was your big issue because you had some foundation things, some shins
There's a
that had to
pier,
be
yeah. That
added.
one
Yeah.
beam had twisted, and yeah, I did get up
Yep.
underneath there. Yeah, I thought someone was going to murder me. That was the first. That was my first crawl space
Or a big
experience.
snake was going to come out and get you.
Dude, me belly crawling in a crawl space, and oh my gosh, like that was a learning experience. But and you know what?
So
Here's the like get back to like little side note. Here's a
yeah,
learning experience. Until I now I've done that. Every flip I do that has a crawl space, I will make sure I have somebody that's like, hey,
yeah,
while you're here, my Pablo or whoever, hey, I need that cleared out. Like, I need you to spend some time under there, get
yeah,
all the stuff out because this is going to come up on an inspection. Same thing with the attic. Get up
yeah,
in the attic, get all the junk out, please. Because every time this comes up, get your junk out from underneath the crawl space and then get your junk out of the attic. So, side note,
yeah,
when you actually do those things yourself, you're like, what the heck,
yeah.
and you
Fail
understand the
forward, man.
frustration, and it holds water and moisture and all that stuff. So, but no, I didn't have
Well,
to.
it,
So
it
I didn't
does,
have to do that
and
insulation.
and you see, I mean, trades. You've seen this just recently because you've been helping me out with Shady Hill as well. And if one trade doesn't pick up their mess, the rest of them don't either.
Yeah,
You know,
for sure.
it's very annoying because we're paying for the trash haul. They don't have to worry about that. It's out in the driveway, at Shady Hill, versus this new project you're working at. It's in the garage.
Hmm.
But all it's got to do is travel from where they're working and
Yeah,
travel to where the trash is, to be picked up, and
yeah.
just clean up, just sweep up, clean up your debris.
Hmm.
And every single job, it's like that. And it's just, it's annoying because having a clean workspace is
It makes a
extremely nice to
difference. It
have.
does make a difference. Yeah,
And things don't get lost and thrown away. I mean,
like my crowbar,
I ran into that at Shady Hill with the,
your
very
LEDs.
expensive parts for the shower, being thrown away. And we're out there trash digging because I get a phone call that,
Oh,
oh,
really?
we
Oh
need the
no.
handheld. And I'm like, you had the handheld. I showed
Mm.
it to your guy. And he goes, well, it's not here. We'll go pick another one up. I'm like, no, there's a very specific one that goes with that
Oh gosh.
setup. So literally, I'm over there one morning and we're going through, and this is after it rained. And so we find the handheld in a disintegrated cardboard box,
Oh my gosh.
and the handheld is there on the ground at the very bottom of the trash pile. But like you had to like go through it, like, you know, we're looking for a dead body, like go
Yeah.
from this corner to this point to this point to back
Mm-hmm.
to this point.
Uh,
And the plumber had said he'd already dug in the trash once. And I'm like, no, it's here. Like,
yeah.
I know it's here.
Yeah.
So we
Well, I'm going to be
found it.
digging through trash over at Primrose today, trying to find my crowbar. Not as expensive as your shower handle, but that is an
Yeah, but
important piece of
still,
demo. And like I've used
still,
it for two
yes,
days straight. I'm like I set it
yes.
somewhere, and I turn around, I'm like, where's that thing?
But circling back to preparing your home, so going back to that idea, pier and beam, yes, pier and beam is more prone to potential problems than a slab home.
Well,
Although
just real
some
quick
people,
on the pier and beam, you can encapsulate it. That was a thing that like it's
yes,
super expensive. So that's like the Cadillac version of it. You can encapsulate the crawl space where it really is. It's like a closed in environment. You can
yeah,
it would be super cozy. It's all
we
insulated.
we did that at so it's expensive to do because the closed cell foam is basically a waterproofing cell or a waterproofing foam that doesn't have any um, wicking ability. It dries really hard, and it's a waterproof type of membrane versus like a spray foam is good for insulation, keeps insects out, everything else, but water will penetrate through it. It's soft to the touch, versus hard. So that's a closed cell versus an open cell. And the house that we did at 2300 Custer, pier and beam home, expansions were pier and beam. To get the energy rating that we were trying to do, we had to insulate the crawl space at a R30. And so in order to insulated at R30. We did a closed cell foam, which was 2 inches, which is equivalent to like 4.5 inches of open cell. But what that did is it created that moisture barrier underneath the entire crawl space, and everything got sprayed, and it created that insulation there. So that helps a lot. And then we added bats on top of it. The problem with adding bats or open, fiberglass insulation under a pier and beam home is that depending on the moisture levels in the home, can wick up moisture, and then it becomes a bigger problem because if that insulation stays wet too long, then it will create wood rot, right? Up against wood. If you have a wood infrastructure and you got heavy moisture, it's up against it all the time.
Yeah.
Now you're creating a haven for termites as well as, wood rot. So it's a fine line of a battle between energy guys and like engineers on what they want to see underneath the pier beam.
It has benefits because it's easy to adjust the foundation, and it's easy to run new electrical, and it's easy to run new plumbing. Those are all great things. But when it comes to freezing temperatures, may not be the best thing. So slab. So let's go to slab. Obviously, much more your in-ground stuff is not going to be really at risk unless it's no power for a long period of time. So we've all heard the tips of, opening up your cabinet doors, letting air circulate your heated air inside the house, touch the pipes that are touching the sink, and especially on your exterior walls. But you've got a pool, you've got your hose bibs. So what are some of the things that, you typically do with those to get ready for a real hard freeze?
So you've got those, those outside hose bibs that you see, the styrofoam ones you can get at Home Depot and Lowe's and things like that.
Seems so cheap.
Amazon is selling those. They're like a nylon, looks like a big mitten basically, and it's insulated, waterproof, and they've got a drawstring on them, and it's basically like a nylon bag. And the first time I saw them, one of my tenants, one of my midterms actually bought them and put them on. I was like, what is that? Anyways, now on Amazon, you can find them kind of everywhere. So I just actually ordered a bunch of them and put them on at my personal home as well as some of the midterms. And it helps, even if you have PEX and you have new freeze protected, hose bibs. The freeze protection hose bib, basically what it does is it has a mechanism right inside of the hose bib connection. And what it'll do is if it freezes, then it'll bust right there at the connection versus bust further down or back inside the wall. So it actually has a scenario where it won't bleed out. It'll basically just when you turn it on, it'll bust there. So however they're designed to be less of an issue.
So this is at the hose bib?
Yeah, we had that.
Is that something
it's
you
called
can
a
switch
freeze
out pretty easily, or?
Yeah, it's mainly all newer homes, and this technology has been around for the last 10, 20 years probably.
Okay.
But it's the actual like freeze protected hose bib. And basically what happens, like I said, is if it busts kind of in the, like before the stop somehow, like there's a little section and you don't know it's busted until you go to turn it on and then it's spraying water everywhere. Right at the hose bib itself. And that happened to me actually on a new hose bib after we rebuilt the home in 2018. One of the following winters, spring came, and I was like, why is this thing bleeding out now when I turn it on? But it could have caused a lot bigger problem and flooded the house, but it didn't, right? So those things, if you go ahead and protect them, it can't hurt. And anything in the outside wall that's going to be exposed to the weather, even if it's insulated, especially if we lose power. If we lose power, it's kind of like there's not much we can do. Though the best thing you can do is if you lose power and you're getting some lines frozen as it is. I mean, you could drip faucets and do all that, but essentially, the best thing to do is go turn the water off at the street. Just to eliminate the source. You know, so at Shady Hill, we don't have heat on yet.
Right.
And so, I mean, I've got that mini split running in the garage with the door open, and it's definitely warmer inside the home than it is outside the home.
Mm.
But I went ahead and just shut the water off.
Yeah.
You know, at the street, I let all the system out. So I let all the water out of the system and just turned the water off.
Yeah.
And that seems to be much safer of a choice to do. But mind you, if you're living in the home, it's a little hard to operate with no water on. So I get that, but
yeah, I know for us, when it got really, really cold, the only thing I had to do is the water did quit running inside briefly, although we had power, and our hot water heater's in the attic. And so I ran up into the attic. I ran a couple, old school lamps, the shop lamps that are just hot to the touch. And I put a couple of those up there right by the line, and that seemed to work. That
could create a fire hazard, by the way. But.
Yeah, I'm tired of it. I don't want to hear it. We have water. We'll deal with that when that comes around. So we had
They
hot
do
water.
sell it, like the safety, space heaters and things like that. Like again, it's like similar. So what happens on boats a lot of times, people put these non-rated, space heaters on their boats, and they catch fire. And so a lot of these fires in the wintertime with boats have to do with space heaters. So you got to get the ones that are Coast Guard approved and things like that. But you could do something similar like that in the attic. The other thing that you could do is drawing a blank, but just make sure that you do have certain things shut off that are going to be exposed and covered up. The biggest issue comes when we lose power, right? And that's the part where like it what I was going to say is, so one of the major things that happened back in 21 when we had the major freezes and we lost power, the majority of the claims that were the worst were where people packed up and left their house because they lost power. So they went over to somebody else's home or went to a hotel or something that had power, and they left their home and they left the water on. And when they left the water on, they left powers off, even if they were dripping faucets, and literally thousands of people came back to their home, opened up the front door, and water's pouring out.
Yeah.
Because it expands, when it freezes, and then when it thaws out.
So how do you bleed your system? So if you go turn the water off at the street, then you just go turn your hose bib on?
You turn the hose bib on, you turn the kitchen sink on. You could basically turn on, open up as many fixtures as you can, or you might do it at a hose bib first that's closest to the entry point of the water going into the house.
Okay.
And then go to like the farthest point of the house and then open that faucet up too and run it until there's no more water.
Yeah, that's good to know.
Basically, it takes all the pressure out of the water, right? So now there's no more forced pressure, because what happens is pipes freeze. You have constant water pressure coming from, our city water. And as soon as that freeze goes away, you've got that pressure forcing to it. And the expansion of the gas from frozen water, et cetera, it's going to create, tension, and it's going to burst somewhere. So,
yeah, I was at Home Depot. We're about to move to our last segment about talking about a house, but I was at Home Depot, and I thought it was a bad sign where I saw a plumber, like in a branded plumbing truck, walking out with a water shutoff valve turn tool, which I have. I'm like, how do you not have this? Like, how are you a professional plumber and you're going to Home Depot? Like, and maybe he lost it. Maybe I'll give him benefit of the doubt. So
maybe it's where the crowbar is.
Our last, I'm afraid it's behind a wall somewhere, but our last segment is where we talk about cool property, and this is also where the screen share will be really cool. So I found this one. 2011 Cedar Springs Road, Unit 606. We haven't really talked about many condos, but we talk a lot about
the moodiness,
kind of the moodiness and the hotel feel. And man, this has it. So we'll look through this. This has some crazy wallpaper. It has a really interesting tile. But as we're talking through this, if you had to live in a city and live in a condo, Which one would you go with?
Man, that's legit.
This is cool. There's like open concrete beams everywhere, and
Yeah.
they don't look like they're fake. These look like
Well, and you look at the view too. Like you're looking at some of the iconic
yeah.
buildings
This has
right
to
there
be
in
in Uptown.
Dallas.
I'm guessing Cedar
Yeah,
Springs. Is that Uptown?
it is. Yeah,
Oh wow! Look at
yeah.
that
You're
balcony.
staring right at like I think that's the W and Woodall Rogers
Okay, so this
running
is right
through
by the
there.
AAC and all that.
Yeah,
Wow. Okay. Um, love the
the
skeleton,
loft feel.
the stair, loft
I've
feel.
always been fascinated with with lofts ever since the movie Big came out. So
Oh yeah.
as a little kid, when Big came out, and he's up there at the big loft that he rented with the big trampoline, like I just thought that was epic.
Here's
So
what I
that was
don't.
one of the dreams I did not fulfill.
Yeah. Well, you could still do it. So the thing I don't like about this specific staging or
Staging,
design is
yeah,
it
it's
the ultra
uber modern.
modern
Yeah,
weird furniture. If I'm living here, I'm going with what I have coined as the well-traveled professor, the eclectic look, the cool,
I don't think
interesting.
you and I would do very good in those dining room chairs.
No, that would be a one-time use thing.
I could just
This
see
is the
those things
equivalent of
just
a
folding
plastic
out on
fork at
us.
a
It just,
barbecue place. Like this is
yeah,
only
like you would go into a restaurant with those chairs. I'm like, sir, ma'am, can you get me a different chair?
yeah. Do you have a cinder block I can use? Because this thing is worthless. Most of the furniture in here I would break within about 48 hours. This table, that's a no go.
Yeah, that's too modern.
You know what this reminds me of because this movie is just on repeat during Christmas is
Yeah.
uh, the National Lampoon's Christmas, the
Yep.
neighbors, the
Oh
neighbors
yeah.
that are the
Yeah.
super modern, real hoity toity bougie people.
Yep.
This is like their condo. It's the
Yeah.
over the top modern. They think they're amazing. But the actual structure of this place, back to that, is
Yeah.
really
That's
cool.
cool. Look at that. Look at that second floor ceiling. Like we
Yeah.
were just watching Landman the other day, and she walks into a house. One of the characters walks in the house and looks up, and there's a open space like that, like a bridge
So it's
that
like,
has
I think is
glass
that
through it.
plexiglass? What is that? Like they
Yeah, it's probably
really thick
really strong
plexi,
plexiglass.
and then they
Yeah.
put LED lights in it along
Yeah.
the beams. So it's
That's
like a lit
legit.
up ceiling. That's really, really, really cool. Has the open duct work, which is, your loft
Yeah.
feel. Yeah, really cool. But so let's skip through. That's awful. Well, that is awful. Is that an office?
It's a cool office, like but yeah, the furniture
Dude,
they
that's a
could have
mirror on a
definitely.
mirror. That is a mirrored wall
Yeah,
that has a
that's
mirror
weird.
on it.
That's
No,
odd.
that's a misstep right there. That's a miscue. Um, me saying
They
it's
need more
$4 million.
color. They definitely need more color on the furniture. And
Yeah,
this could have
there's
been something where you do some, kind of swanky mid-century
yeah,
stuff, or
that's what I'm saying.
yeah,
Well-traveled professor that has some style, that has a little bit of, a little bit of, riz or whatever they say to
hmm
him. Where's this? Maybe it was the other one that had the cool wallpaper. The kitchen's a little bit modern. So yeah, this one is cool in a lot of ways. I really do like it, but it's a little bit too bougie, a little bit too modern. Let's look at one more here.
and for $3.2 million
Yeah.
for
So
it was
what?
big, 4,600 square feet for a condo. That's huge.
Yeah, and so I sent you another one. I think this one. Yeah. So this one's a beautiful, brand
Wow,
new build in Dallas. So
very
what's the
nice.
address on this? 10006 Hollow Way in Dallas.
Okay, Preston
New
Hollow,
build, Preston Hollow, gorgeous, 15 million.
and
Uh,
that looks like it's over off of Park Lane, and
yeah, it's
uh,
got the tennis court, it's
like
got
that.
the beautiful pool,
That
but
might be in Bluffview, but
the finishes in this
is
one
it
are
one story? It looks like it's
yeah,
one story.
yeah, it's one
That's
story.
amazing.
But finish in this one a
That's
lot
beautiful.
more warm, definitely cozy. But there's a crazy so the stonework in here, not
Yeah,
the stone, but like the countertops, the marble and the granite that they're using, insane. Look at
yeah.
this cabinet
Look at
work
that wine
in
room.
the wine room. And then look here,
That's
they did
legit.
the rounded, kind of the
Yeah, the
mid-century
fluted.
rounded, fluted. uh, bar edge there. The light is really cool. It has this like leather strap
Mm-hmm.
around the light. I love this feature that you can see what I'm seeing now. I can't emphasize that enough.
No.
Herringbone flooring in here is
Yeah.
interesting too. This is probably a wallpaper.
Which I mean, so I like that they didn't do herringbone everywhere. To
Yeah,
me,
yeah,
herringbone everywhere is too much.
it's a
Like
bit
it's
much.
nice in a
Look at
couple
this.
areas, but yeah,
Okay, picture 14 for this playing at home, but this is crazy.
uh,
What is
that's
that?
a push. Well, they just basically face the front of the cabinet with quartz or hard surface, whether
Do you think
that's
that this is
quartzite.
matched up with that back? It's not a mirror. There's no
They
mirror.
did they did a pretty good job if it is, and it's possible. Yeah, no, they definitely ran the quartz or the quartzite all the way up, and then that drawer most likely is like a push button. You push it and then it'll pop open. And I don't think they went through the expense of using the electronic push button
But look at the
drawers, but
sink. The
yeah,
sink
that's
bowl
integrated as well.
is integrated with the stone. And then they've got this offset light and then
Yeah.
this
You
this
know what? What this proves, though, and this is something I've kind of been trying to do over the last couple of years, is like emphasizing a powder bathroom, right?
yeah.
Like making a powder bathroom cool.
Yeah.
Because I think forever powder bathrooms have been kind of just put to the wayside,
Mhm.
and people don't focus on them. They focus on the master suite or the primary suite, but not the powder bath. But the powder bath is where your guests are going. So
Yeah.
I think it's cool to dress up the powder baths
And
to
from an
be
expense
something
standpoint, you can
different.
go cool and not break the bank.
Yeah.
Now, this toilet broke the bank. This toilet,
Yeah. Those are
this is
cool.
a $3,000 setup right here. I don't know what those
Yeah.
buttons are on the
Well,
wall.
that's your flush. Yeah. That's your flush mechanism because it's a tankless toilet. So it's got constant pressure in there and it's wall mounted. And it's basically like a commercial style toilet. So yeah, the plumbing, you don't have an exposed tank.
Hmm.
So the plumbing is inside the
But what do
wall.
you jiggle when it's not working right?
You're kind of SOL at that point,
You
but
call a guy and bust some sheetrock out? Like,
pretty much
hey, Carlos, I forgot about this, but this thing's been
that's the
running for
problem with those.
days.
Those operate like commercial toilets. So if you notice in commercial
Uh,
toilets, they just have constant water pressure all the time.
yeah.
And usually there's a shutoff valve nearby that you can go in the wall and shut water off to that unit.
Let
But
me tell you what those people that live in this house don't know where it is a shut-off valve for the toilet and the power. They're calling someone panicked
yeah,
if something goes wrong. But
hopefully it's not
overall,
an
really cool.
outside
They have the
wall.
butler kitchen, like we've talked about.
So those, I think that the butler kitchens are really cool. It really confuses me though, because go to the main kitchen, and we've seen this in another property as well. Why have two stoves?
They got a
Like
lot
it
going on.
really confuses me. Like if you're gonna do a butler's kitchen and you don't want people to see you cooking, and you want that separate kitchen, then just do a separate kitchen and then like leave it out. I
I
don't know.
just think, but
To me,
having
it's
a
just
traditional kitchen with no stove, I just think would really throw people off.
yeah, but why go through the expense? Like, how often are you actually using that?
Let me tell you what these
Different.
people
Like
aren't
when do you
concerned
choose to
with
do
is
it, and when do
expense. This is a $15 million house.
you, I know, but when do you choose to use the back kitchen versus the forward kitchen?
When
Like,
you're catering and you got a lot of stuff going on and you need the help to be out of the way. That's sort of
I guess. Yeah, I don't know. No, I don't think I'll ever understand the lifestyle, but
yeah. Yeah, like, the most recent time I used my stovetop was with my cast iron skillet
but
making
look,
gravy
then
the other
the
day.
microwave, or is that a no?
These
That's a
people don't
coffee
want
machine.
anyone seeing that.
Okay, that's a
Uh,
coffee machine there. Because I was like, oh wait, so you're gonna build a second kitchen and leave the microwave exposed versus sticking the
oh, that's a
microwave
coffee
in the
machine.
back? But that's a coffee machine.
I
Got it.
will say, just from a design perspective, I don't love the tones of wood here. I don't know. It's not my
They're a little
favorite. But
monochromatic. Yeah,
yeah, a little bit much there. Let's see. We'll go through this real quickly, and then we'll be done for the day. But beautiful home. They could have done a little bit more with the theater, but they
yeah.
look at this wallpaper. Oh my
There you
gosh.
go. Now you
There
speak
now
an
there's
artist's
some.
language.
Now this is like a
So
little
what I
mahjong
like
corner
about
over
this
here.
room, though, this goes back to what we've been discussing is about these lounge rooms, right? Like these lounge conversation rooms.
Yep.
And I always relate it back to like a hotel lobby. You know, like
Mm-hmm.
you're waiting on your room, you're waiting on your luggage, or you're meeting somebody in the lobby,
Mm-hmm.
and you've got these quaint little cool conversation areas where you can kick back and enjoy comfortable furniture and a
Mm-hmm.
cool ambiance. And so I think that these spaces and homes are becoming more, attractive, and
Yeah.
like and trying to stage these homes to allow, spaces like this again, which is kind of funny because we've gotten out of the idea of the formal living room furniture or the formal dining rooms and the formal
Right.
livings for a long time because people are like, we don't use those spaces.
Yeah.
But I think they're coming back, and maybe it's because of the amount of technology that we're exposed to each and every day that people long for this kind of like just sit back, relax
Yeah.
environment and have
Look, no TV
conversations.
on the wall right here. There's no
Yeah.
TV mounted in this room.
So
Now, if you're
they're
going to go
coming
back to
back, but
the,
they're coming back in different locations, not necessarily the first thing you see when you walk in the front door. Like formal livings have
right.
always kind of been presented that way.
This looks like it might be right off the pool, little
Yeah,
game
and that's
room.
perfect. I mean, how cool is that? Like what we did at Shady Hill, our lounge area has a coffee bar, wine bar.
Yeah.
It's going to have 4 armchairs and a round table, and it's
Mm-hmm.
literally right outside the pool area.
Yeah.
So
It'll be
like
similar
you
to
have
this.
a view to stare at the pool. There's no TV in that section, and
Oh, there you go.
if the
Got a little
weather's
wet
bad or
bar.
whatever, it's hot, you can stare, you still get the environment. Yeah, and they have a bar area there in the same room. So
Yeah. You can drink and
speaking my
read.
language.
Oh, what a day. All right. Let's get through these primaries.
I love
Beautiful,
the
of
window
course.
design like that too. So you
Mm-hmm.
go back
Very
one more.
symmetrical. I love.
Go back. Yeah.
Oh
So
yeah, the
that
transom.
U shape, the upside down U shape. Now
Mm-hmm.
that makes it
Super cool.
for building challenge. If you notice that thickness between those two windows,
Mm-hmm.
on the left and right up at the
Mm-hmm.
top, you notice how thick that
Yeah.
black section is. That's because that has to be a structural mole, because otherwise those windows don't have a lot of support. And
Mm-hmm.
another thing you have to do is, and when I've done that design, is put steel post inside of that sheetrock wall,
Mm.
and that way it's stabilized. Because otherwise, you think about it, like supporting even though there's probably a beam above those windows, there's not a
These
lot to hold.
right.
Yeah,
What's
there's
holding
a
these?
beam ran up there left to right, but then
Right.
down below it,
But these are
what's
screwed
holding
in
this?
here. These are bolted in or whatever. But
Yep.
the downward pressure, if this was just, I guess you could do one big window here, one big window here, and then a transom here. But
Typically, yeah. But to get that effect, I mean, it's extremely cool. I love that
yeah,
design, but
really
you
cool.
have to think
A lot of light.
about it.
And this being on the other side, I mean, look, they thought a lot about the design of this house.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, there's no doubt. Um, of course, primary bathrooms, really nice. All
Nice
right.
steam shower.
Oh, this is the
Yeah.
tile I like. This is the tile I
Oh
liked.
yeah, that's
It's
cool.
interesting. They don't have that at Home Depot. Another little sitting and reading room. These people love to sit and read and play games. It's really neat.
Yeah. Look at that.
All right. Well, cool. Well, we found a new feature. Hallelujah.
Yeah.
Let's
We're like
figure out how to
real
get that
radio
out to
stars
the
now.
get that out to the people. Yeah, we can what's fun too is I was thinking of this is we can get some pictures of your projects now. We can pull them up and talk about them
Yeah.
as you're going through them, and
Okay.
we could play a video and walk through the video, and we'll find ways to use this feature. So anyway, well, we're
Awesome.
bumping up on an hour. Appreciate you hanging with us. If you have not found us yet, find us on Instagram and Facebook, Tavis Westbrook Designs, Ashton Hines, Dallas Real Estate Guy, and find us on Spotify, Apple, whatever you're listening on. Make sure you are subscribed so you know every time that we download a new episode. And we are super excited about 2025. We've got a lot of projects in the works. Tavis has got a huge goal for flips this year. I'm going to be playing a little bit more of a role, hopefully showing up and helping out. And we've got some ways to reach out to some expired listings and all sorts of stuff to try to find some other people out there that either want to list their house or sell their house. And so we've got a lot of things, a lot of irons in the fire. So we're excited about it. I hope you're having a great year. Until next time, have a great day.
See ya.